news we have. And we will try, as we pass information out, to move a bit in the county. So both here in Marlton, we'll try to alternate a little bit so we can talk to various people within the county that are affected by this. So we'll try to keep news out. We'll have the websites and all of that. But pretty much now is the time. So if you have any billionaire friends, now's the time to call them.
I'd like to add to the whole idea of the website. Also on the PocahontasCountyCommission.com website, you can sign up there and get updates. We have this topic on the discussion forum there. So that's yet another way to get information around. As soon as the GVDC has their website available and links, we'll cross-link all that to get information out to you. Go there and sign up and you'll receive updates on this, PocahontasCountyCommission.com.
That was going to be my addition as well, is that as soon as that site comes up, I'll put it on the petition as a news item. I have the opportunity to email the supporters and put up news items that everybody can see. So once that comes available, you'll be able to reach that through the petition site as well.
Does the NSF ever reject these committee recommendations? They say, oh, that's a real dumb idea, go back to the drawing board or whatever, or
yes.
is this kind of a dumb deal?
The NSF has certainly rejected committee recommendations before. It's accepted partial committee recommendations before, and it has gotten new committees together. This new committee is actually an example of that. So I didn't know how far back in history anybody really wanted to travel, but as a result of the 2000 decadal survey, there was a 2006 committee called the Senior Review, which went through a very similar process. And coming out of that one, the GBT was ranked as crucial to U.S. astronomy. But the reality is science changes fast. As new discoveries come about, science is bound to change. And so although on the one hand it sounds silly to keep having these reviews, on the other hand it's what keeps science vital. So the 2006 recommendation, the two strongest recommendations out there that affected astronomy, actually two of that was the closure of the Arecibo telescope and the closure of the VLBA. Arecibo, as a result of that, did lose significant funding. So their funding has been cut in about half of what comes out of the NSF's astronomy budget. As a result, they now have funding from the NSF's atmospheric budget and NASA. And so their total budget is still the same, but the NSF's astronomy budget footprint went down. The VLBA, the international community, stepped in. That's why we now have funding coming in for the VLBA from the international community. It's taken a few years for it to come in. And so they've done that, but clearly they chose not to get rid of Arecibo. In fact, Arecibo is now listed as one of the important components to it. So yes, this is 100% a recommendation. It is not a done deal by any stretch.
Karen mentioned the fact that their total operating budget is what percent of NSF's?
Actually, I don't know the percent of the NSF's, but of the U.S. federal funding that goes into astronomy and astrophysics, which includes NASA, all the NASA money going into astronomy and astrophysics includes the various NSF divisions, not just the National Science Foundation's astronomy division, but there are other divisions that go into this field. It includes all federal funds that go into it. There's other bits and pots from others. The Green Bank site budget, even the $10 million budget that was quoted within their report, is only 0.7% of the federal funds that go into astronomy and astrophysics. That's the level of cut we're talking about. And that's just astronomy and astrophysics. We're not
Will those kinds of cuts allow them to build these new instruments?
No.
Nowhere near it.
No, the cuts that they're talking about will not allow them to build the new instruments. The cuts that they're talking about will potentially allow them to pay for partial operational funds for the new instruments.
You said that, the NSF astronomy funds are flat. Would they be able to pull from other parts of their budget that is still increasing?
So that's an interesting question. I do not know a lot about the process behind the National Science Foundation's budgeting. There's two different ways what Suzanne described could be done. One is, in fact, that if other members of the science community decided that they wish to put forward money towards this facility. That happens here on a very small scale right now. We've got the atmospheric division is paying for one of the telescopes, but it's a really cheap telescope around. So that happens a little bit, but that could increase in the same way it increased with Arecibo. The other option, of course, is within the National Science Foundation themselves. They could redistribute the funds. But I do not know the process there. I do know that Congress weighs in heavily in terms of telling them how to prioritize their funding, and so I don't know what kind of freedoms they have within that.
Is it conceivable that the GBT could be torn down?
Were we unsuccessful, were the NSF to decide to fully divest us, and were we unsuccessful in raising any other funds, then yes, that would be the ultimate result. I should add to that, even in the, what I would call extremely remote chance that this facility, all of this facility were to go away, the one thing that won't go away is the National Radio Quiet Zone. The National Radio Quiet Zone exists for us and for the Sugar Grove facility. The Sugar Grove facility are committed to the continued existence of the Radio Quiet Zone. They would like us to continue to manage it. It works out very well for them in that situation. It works out well for us too, so that's fine. But the NRQZ is here for more than just us, so that is the one component that would not leave the area.
Is there any funding available through the Navy facility?
Well, is it still associated with the Navy?
I'll start this if you don't care. It's interesting because the U.S. Naval Observatory does now, not here, but in Socorro, but has here in the past provided funds to operate 1, 2, 3 of our telescopes, but not for the reasons that you probably think. One of the U.S. Naval Observatory's charter, like the Royal Observatory in England, is the nation's timekeeping. So they used radio telescopes to monitor pulsars, which are the most accurate, naturally occurring thing that we know of. And so pulsars would allow them to calibrate the atomic clocks on Earth. So it allowed them to adjust the nation's time as they needed to. I mean, you know, you probably heard every few years they'll say, oh, you know, New Year's we've gained or lost, you know, 2 billionths of a second or something, and that's how they do that. But it also allowed them, as part of the geodetic work, to understand continental drift because the telescopes move apart from each other or move closer to each other, and also the wobble of the Earth on its axis. We used to think that it spun perfectly symmetrically around its axis, and we actually know that it has a wobble in it, and all of that is through USNO. USNO does not provide any funds to us right now. As I said, they are out in Socorro.
That's right. So they are one of the groups that are helping to pay for the VLBA, moving towards the future for exactly that reason, for the timing issue. The Navy does actually support us greatly with the NRQZ currently in terms of much of the equipment that we use and so forth, and they are going to increase their support at that level. Whether or not they could help us defray the cost of managing the NRQZ is something that is being thought about right now. But otherwise, their interest in the facility would be, as Mike said, use of some of the side telescopes or the GBT. And so that idea is being broached within the Navy and the Department of Defense. It would be a very different environment than anything we've worked out in the past. We have a very open campus. Anybody can walk on down and see things, and so that would be an interesting discussion to have with them. But it is an idea that we've broached, and it is an idea that is working its way slowly through the federal system, whether or not they'd be interested in that.
Am I the only one that's heard that Sugar Grove is closing? I heard it from a lawyer in Franklin. They're also closing now?
Sugar Grove is not closing. The Sugar Grove facility is staying open, and the antenna are staying open. However, the Navy is moving much of their personnel off the base, and it's going to be run more remotely than it is currently. But the Sugar Grove facility itself will continue to exist and is an extremely important part of the nation's defense. So that was my cause earlier. I was trying to figure out what to say. So the Navy, I don't know if it's 100% or the majority or half, but much of the Navy is moving out of the Sugar Grove facility, and what they call the lower base itself is no longer going to be operated as a naval base, but the antennas, the upper base, all of that is going to continue to exist.
Dave?
Yeah, I want to take a chance to take off my commissioner hat for a minute. I think most people in this room know me as the county commissioner, but what got me here to Pocahontas County in 2000 was, that speaks very much to the strength of the educational programs this observatory offers. I was a college professor teaching computer science at Congo University at the time, and due to summer workshops that were offered here for teachers, in addition to students, teachers had programs here as well. I was introduced to the field of radio astronomy and how I could take that back to the classroom and use the scientific teaching methods from that education in my own classes that I taught there. So it has a very special place in my heart, the observatory does, and knowing that that's part of what brought me here. So that continued for the next few summers, and eventually caused me to move here full-time, and I worked here at the observatory as a software engineer for a couple of years. And then I moved out to Illinois on a slight career change, but still in astronomy, and worked there for 2 years on, I'm almost hesitant to say, the LSST, the Large Sidereal, the Large Synoptic Survey Telescope that was mentioned. But if it's any consolation at all, the data access software I wrote or worked on prototyping for that telescope didn't work very well at all. So that there's so putting my commissioner hat back on, I hope that there's something we can do to help the commission. Anything we can do, if you have new information on Tuesday, once we talk about it then, whatever we can do to help, whoever we can contact, we look forward to helping as much as possible.
Well, actually, yeah, thank you for that. Actually, is sort of a tangential discussion or statement. One of the report's recommendations for Arecibo was done on the basis of this pulsar system that they have on the telescope. What it doesn't say is that we built that for them. So it was all built here and sent to Arecibo. So again, about the expertise of the national community here, it would have never occurred.
So what kind of expense would the other sites, like the VLA, incur if Greenbank were to close? For instance, the machinists who do
That's
build a
exactly
huge
right.
amount of, how would,
That's-
are they thinking about that? Because there would be a cost involved.
So we are thinking hard about that. The report committee did not, but to be fair, that would be a very difficult question for an outside group to try to understand. So that's exactly what I was talking about, Christine working hard on trying to disentangle our budget. That's exactly the types of things we're trying to understand, so that somebody can understand what it really means to say we're just going to divest the GBT. What funding amount does that really mean to the National Science Foundation's Astronomy Division? It's certainly not the full amount that we need. So the GBT does not cost the $11 million that's written up in the report. That was our budget number for the year they happened to look at it anymore. But that was our budget number for the year they happened to look at it, and that's because we fund the machine shop here on site. We fund all the educational activities. We pay for the existence of many of the functions of headquarters here on site. So all of that's combined together into that cost. So exactly what it would cost and what it's going to mean to the other facilities, what they're going to have to pay. If, again, to take an extreme example that I don't believe will happen, imagine that we didn't exist anymore, or we do exist, but NREO's kicked out. You know, so get headquarters to headquarters and everybody else spread out. Well, now, within headquarters, they're going to have to pay for additional office space. They're going to have to pay for all of that too. So that's part of what we're trying to understand. We had a pretty good picture of it before, but it was part of the one NREO idea where we didn't worry too much if we're going to build a widget for this guy or a widget for that guy, as long as we're building widgets for NREO telescopes. We were happy. We just had to worry about it if it was for some other facility. And so now we have to separate that out to try to understand exactly what it takes to run a GBT and what it's going to cost everybody else then if they have to pay for it. Our machine shop is one of the best in the world. We get called on by people, our engineers get called on by people from all over the world that want to build things to try to understand how to do it, and they look to Greenbank. We've been here for more than 50 years. We have vast amounts of experience. We're called on not just within NREO, but around the world to do that, and so that cost would have to be borne then of them hiring out, looking for the expertise, trying to find the expertise that exists, and then paying for that within even the other NREO facilities. And that's a huge concern across NREO as well as the loss of the GBT. Nobody's interested in seeing that either.
How many countries have equipment